जगन्नाथ पुरी धाम, नवनीत धाम, वृंदावन धाम की जय। तुलसी हरि बिन्नी देवी की जय। हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत भक्त जय गौर प्रेमानंदे।
हरि हरि बोल। Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaura Trishe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vrindai Tulsi Debai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namah Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Go Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. First of all, I offer my unlimited Dandavat Pranams, my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Astatarasata Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. And then I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Ashtatarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj and Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Ashtatarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I offer my Dandavat Pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Siksha Guru Varga, my Rupa Nuga Guru Varga, and my Dandavat Pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. So we're continuing with our reading of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary on the 2 verses of Upadeshamrita of Rupa Goswami. And the 2 verses are verse 2 and 3. Verse 2 is telling the 6 unfavorable items for bhakti. And the 3rd verse is telling the 6 favorable items for bhakti. And yesterday we began to introduce the topic of his commentary on the 3rd item. The 3rd item in the 6 items of favorable qualities. So first is utsahan, enthusiasm. Nishchayad means firm conviction. Dhairyat, actually that's the 3rd item. Dhairyat means patience and perseverance. Then comes the 4th item. This is the 4th item. Tat karma pravartanat. Tat karma pravartanat, which means to performing activities favorable for bhakti. Anukul, that they are favorable. So, yesterday we were just discussing the topic in general, how it is essential for the devotees who are serious about making spiritual advancement in the pathway of bhakti and achieving the result, the fruit of the higher stages of bhakti. If we want to remain in the lower stages of bhakti, we can do that for many lifetimes. Krishna will allow. He's waiting for us to fully embrace surrender. Krishna is always waiting for that. He's always waiting for every jiva to fully embrace surrender to him. Why? Because then relationship can begin. Krishna wants to have a relationship with each and every one of his eternal parts and parcels, are us atomic-sized jivatma. Krishna wants to have with all of us. But he is giving us the freedom to accept that or to not accept it for the time being. Time being, that time being could be trillions of years in our earthly time calculation, the entire life of Lord Brahma, or it can even be more. If we don't want to embrace surrender to Krishna, he allows us to go into the next creation, even after the universe is dissolved, and everything goes back into the body of Mahavishnu with all the jiva souls. And they rest there for some time. Then again, he creates Mahavishnu. He creates the universes. Then he expands into the universes as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu and Kirudakshaya Vishnu. And that cycle is going on eternally. Eternally. We cannot calculate, actually none of us know. There's no way to know how many universes we've been in. It's quite unimaginable to us. Even to be in this one universe for 500 trillion years. When it's calculated, it's in that area of time of Lord Brahma's 100 years. So we've been wandering and wandering and wandering and wandering and wandering. All because Krishna allows us free will. We must understand this to be the truth. This is part a very important, essential part of devotees becoming actual devotees. That we give up our independence and surrender to Krishna and accept his will as our eternal good fortune to fulfill Krishna's will. But we're getting close, those of us who sit here today in this room in New Braj in front of Sri Sri Radha, Govinda and so forth. We're getting very close. You know how close? 1 or 2 lives, Gurudev told. Yes, that close. There's one praman, one evidence for this that is often quoted. It's been quoted by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. From the story of Krishna's fleeing the battlefield in the Mathura section of his pastimes. And this one king, Kalyavana, was chasing. And we know the story of Muchukunda, the king who was asleep in the cave. And Muchukunda burned him to ashes because he disturbed his sleep. But then Muchukunda saw this brilliant form of Krishna. Actually, he was showing 4 arms, his Vishnu form. And then there was an exchange. And Muchukunda recognized, this is my Supreme Lord. And he began to offer prayers of Muchukunda. There's one prayer there, still haven't memorized the Sanskrit. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I haven't done it often enough. But the prayer that he's offering is that, oh my dear Lord, when the time comes that a living entity is now nearing the end of this endless wandering in this universe, life after life, when the sojourn of his samsara chakra begins to come to an end, then the symptom is he meets your pure devotee. That is his very clear statement. He meets your pure devotee. So, that's why we can say that we are close, very close. Gurudev affirmed this fact many times. He would say, for many of you, you have the samskaras. He would say, especially Prabhupada disciples. That maybe 1 or 2 lifetimes before you can attain bhav. And once you attain bhav, you're already liberated, even if you still have this body. You see, so this is a perspective that we have to embrace in our lives. We're just very tiny, insignificant jivas, but somehow or other we have become fortunate, no doubt about it. So that good fortune, we have to know that it took a long time to get here. Now, with that understanding, we should embrace the process being given for us to attain quickly this perfection, which will ultimately give us Krishna Prem, the rarest achievement for any jiva in all time and space. We are so fortunate, cannot imagine. So, that determination should come in us. Even though I'm very fallen, I'm very weak, I'm very devoid of good qualities, I'm so full of anarthas. All of these things are true. But the overriding factor is that we have met Krishna's pure devotee, and we decided with our free will to follow him. We decided, we made that decision. Probably it took many lifetimes to come to that point and make that decision. Krishna's been trying to give us all bhakti unmukha sukritis. So finally we met that personality. And we've tried to live our lives, not only this life, but probably some previous lives. Some of the younger group, they landed they landed in a devotee family from their birth. So extremely rare and fortunate. See? But still, now the work has to be done. And those who are truly fortunate, sincere, they will understand eventually. If they don't understand it too much soon in their lives, but at some point, because they have some scars. So they'll understand their good fortune. And I know that there are so many who truly do understand. Yes. And they're practicing, they're trying. Very sincere jivas. Very fortunate, sincere jivas. So we have to embrace the Upadeshamrita as our life and soul. This is what was told in the beginning of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book. Embrace it as our life and soul. So, the fourth item is very all-encompassing because it means performing activities favorable for bhakti. So Srila Rupa Goswami has prescribed the methodology of tat karma pravartana for those persons who are eager to perform bhajan. Yes. So in his Upadeshamrita, he has designated those activities that are favorable for the cultivation of bhakti as tat karma. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 19th chapter, verse 20 through 24, Sri Krishna has told Uddhava. I'm reading those verses. Shraddhamrita katayam me shashvan mad anukirtanam parinishta chapujayam stuti stavanam mama adara paricharyayam sarvangayar abhivandanam mad bhakta pujya vyadika. Here's the famous verse. Mad bhakta pujya vyadika sarva bhuteshu manmati. We'll get into that. There's one line. Mad bhakta pujya vyadika. To worship my bhakta is even greater than worshipping me. Mad artesh vanga cheshtasha vachasa mad guneranam mayarpanam chamanasa sarvakama vivarjanam mad arte artha parityago bhokasya cha sukasya cha ishtam daktam hutam japtam mad artam yad vratam tapa evam dharmair manushyanam udhavatma nivedanam Mai sanjayate bhakti konyo arto syavashishyate. Konyo arto syavashishyate. So, O Uddhava, I will tell you the topmost method to attain prem bhakti to me. One must first practice sadhana bhakti. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Radha Govinda Jiva Ki Jai. I think we should pay close attention to this, because Krishna is telling Uddhava that I will tell you the topmost method to attain prem bhakti to me. One must first practice sadhana bhakti. Through this, one attains prem bhakti. Hear this point about sadhana bhakti. Those who want to attain prem bhakti to me ought to have firm faith in the nectarine narrations of my pastimes. First item, faith in Krishna's pastimes. The Katha. Then, constantly perform some kirtan of my qualities, pastimes, and names. Constantly perform some kirtan of my qualities, my pastimes, and my names. Remain completely fixed in their worship of me. There means the devotee, the devotees. The devotees should remain completely fixed in their worship of me. Praise me through stotras, prayers. Perceive all living entities in relation to me. Dedicate all material endeavors to me. All material endeavors dedicated to me. Glorify me alone with their words. Offer their mind to me. Reject all material desires. Give up wealth and material sense gratification for my sake. And perform all activities such as charity, sacrifice, chanting, vows, and austerities for me alone. O Uddhava, what other object remains to be attained by one who follows these practices and has attained bhakti to me? So, that's Krishna's summarization to Uddhava. Here's what you have to do. Now, Srila Rupa Goswami, we're going to hear from Bhaktivinoda Thakur how Rupa Goswami has divided those activities into 64 limbs of bhakti. And that's called tat karma. Those 64 limbs is called tat karma. Now, based on these instructions of Bhagavan, Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu has divided these activities into 64 limbs. These 64 limbs are mentioned. They are mentioned in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 22, verses 115 through 129, as follows. So, who's speaking in this chapter, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Lord Chaitanya himself.
To who?
Sanatana Goswami.
Yes. Chapter 22, chapters 20 through 25 are Sanatana Siksha. And this 22 chapter is all about how to practice devotional service. So, now we're reading that list as mentioned from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. First item, to take shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Guru. I happen to have memorized the Sanskrit for that one from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami's verse. Ado Gurvashrayam. What does that mean? Ado Gurvashrayam. beginning with Ado, first item, taking shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Guru. Sometimes said Guru Pada Ashrayam, of his lotus feet. To take shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Guru. Number 2, to accept Diksha from him. Number 3, to serve him. That's called Guru Seva. Number 4, to be inquisitive, to learn about the true Dharma of the living entity. Very interesting. To be very inquisitive, to learn about the true Dharma of the living entity. Number 5, to follow the path by which sadhus have attained Bhagavan. Sadhu Vartma Anugamanam. Sadhu Vartma Anugamanam. To follow that path, that Vartma, that all the sadhus have attained perfection and realized Bhagavan. Number 6, to give up one's own enjoyment for the sake of love for Krishna. Give an example of this. How is it that we can give up our own enjoyment for the sake of love for Krishna?
Live in the mountains.
If one has a tendency to eat too much, he can regulate his eating so that it'll be favorable for his devotional service.
What did you say, Jaigo?
I was just making a joke where I was saying living in the mountains.
Yeah. The thing is that has to be the general attitude and mood of the devotee, right? That my enjoyment is very irrelevant. Whether I'm in a happy condition with lots of sense gratification or the opposite. That's actually irrelevant to a real sadhaka. Why? Because his endeavors are all for Krishna. And Krishna is controlling everything. Oh, JP.
Do you want me to go get that?
No, he's there. He's just delivering my other bag of laundry. JP, I put that money there on the shelf next to the lamp. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, take it. So, it's irrelevant for a real sadhak. He's not attached to happiness or distress. He accepts both equally. There's a very nice song in our songbook. The song is called, I think it's the song Atmanivedanam, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur is expressing.
Now that I've surrendered to you, I see joy in all directions.
Yeah. Can you repeat more?
That's about it.
Yeah, he says, from the day that I surrendered unto you, from that day, all my sorrows have gone far, far away. And I see only happiness in all directions. Wherever I look, I only see happiness. Then he says, in the course of my service to you, O my Lord, I see both happiness and distress as equally great riches. These are all riches to such a surrendered soul. And then he explains, because both of these, in the course of your service, to accept happiness or to accept distress, both of these in the course of your service, they destroy avidya. They both have that effect. So none of us can avoid happiness and distress coming in our lives. Is that possible for the jivas who reside here within the huge egg-shaped universe that we live in? Is it possible for any jiva to avoid becoming distressed? Is it? Think about it. I think Hiranyakashipu made that attempt, didn't he? Did he not? Okay. Always, the demoniac temperament makes that attempt to gather together all the facilities to avoid all unhappiness and to become happy through sense gratification. So, no one can avoid. We don't find a single case. In the heavenly planets now, on the upper sphere, there's an arrangement there by Krishna for living entities who have acted piously. But they like to still enjoy sense gratification separately from Bhagavan. So the Svargaloka and those places are available to them. But in actuality, it's like a dream. And the dream ends. And then again, you're plunged back in to the land, to the region where karma is performed. Up there, karma is not performed. It's just the result. But here is the field of karma. But this is a great gift, to get a human body and to be in the field of karma, and then to understand how really I have to dedicate all of my actions to the service of the Lord. And whether the effect of distress or happiness is coming to me is irrelevant. Why? Because I'm always tasting the nectar of surrendering to Krishna, and whatever he's putting me through, that's for my benefit, to bring me closer to him. I'll repeat to you, I mentioned this in a class of my initiation letter from Srila Prabhupada. You might remember that he gave me an instruction, because I asked him, I didn't really ask him, I just mentioned it to him in my request letter for initiation, that I was experiencing some difficulty, and I mentioned about the mind, you know, difficulty controlling the mind and so forth. And then Prabhupada answered, he said, you say in your letter that you are experiencing some difficulty, but that is Krishna's mercy upon you, to make you turn to him more and more. What a wonderful instruction, right? That we should see, no matter what, is Krishna's mercy. We should also see that we should look at it as being, okay, I did some bad things. Now I'm getting the result. Well, let me just serve Krishna. Tatenu kampam susamikshimano. But that assurance by Srila Prabhupada and all of our Shastras, that actually is Krishna's mercy on you. And why is it his mercy? Because actually Krishna's trying to help you to turn to him and to always take shelter of him and to always be absorbed in him. He's doing that. That's why he's allowing some difficulties to come. And we also see, even for the pure devotees in this world, they stand as the supreme examples for all the devotees, that they can tolerate any condition with complete dependence upon the Lord. Yeah, I was hearing Prabhupada the other day, his lecture given in India. I forget the name of the place, famous town in India. It starts with an L. Lucknow. Yes, it was Lucknow. So, and Prabhupada was giving a lecture in 1971 when he was traveling, you know, that period with his disciples and starting his movement. And he told the whole story about, well, first of all, how he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, because that day that he was giving the lecture happened to be the appearance day. of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he told the whole story, how he met his Guru Maharaj, and he gave many, what he was doing was he was informing these people how this movement was started. But in the course of telling, he told so many details, chronological details, how difficult it was. He was all alone, how difficult it was. And then finally, some persons came, they gave some help. I got a storefront like this. But he explained everything that happened before that. You know, how he got the final instruction from his spiritual master, the same instruction that he got when he met him in the very beginning. And just before he departed, he wrote him a letter and got the same instruction. He told that. He told about how difficult it was for him to start the Back to Godhead magazine. He told about the time when he was translating Srimad Bhagavatam, and finally he got passage to America, and then when he came, he was all alone. And he said, I would go to the docks and check, when is the next ship coming? I had my return ticket already. He would go sometimes. Disappointment. But he persevered. So even the pure devotees, they undergo struggle. But that is bhakti for them. That is bhakti. That is pure bhakti. And Krishna puts his pure devotees through that to show everyone else how you should always be surrendered. So, to give up one's own enjoyment for the sake of love for Krishna. Number 7, to live in a holy place related to Krishna. Dhamvas. Number 8, to accept things only in a quantity sufficient to maintain one's life. Just one comment. Live in a holy place related to Krishna. There weren't any for us to live in the beginning, but Prabhupada made them. Prabhupada made the temples, and he used to say these temples are transcendental. They're not in the material world. I remember when he came to Brooklyn once, maybe you were there, Braj, and we greeted him in the vestibule of his rooms that were adjoining. And all devotees surrounded Prabhupada. He just arrived. And I remember Prabhupada was sitting and all the devotees were so ecstatic. Prabhupada spoke just a few words. And he said, this house is the same, because these were actually identical houses, you know, like the whole block. What are they called? Terraced houses or something? Townhouses. So he mentioned how on this block there are so many houses, but in this house, the spiritual energy, like, I don't remember the words that he used exactly, but he's like, spiritual energy is circulating everywhere. And we could feel that, I tell you. I remember, you might remember, in the summertime, they had a block party. On that very block, we had our Kshatriya devotees kind of like ready for anything, because there were a lot of people who were getting drunk and eating meat and barbecue and everything. Well, the whole block, it was like, how do you call it? Blocked off. So I had come back like in the early evening from Sankirtan, and, you know, seeing all this, I climbed up the stairs and opened the door and went inside the temple, right? And as soon as I entered inside of the temple and closed the door, that was like worlds away. I had that experience so many times, huh? Even in our little Chicago temple, where we were just like 5 devotees, and we had our small Jagannath deities. We'd come back from Sankirtan, and the whole day chanting all day long on the streets of downtown Chicago, and then we'd come back on the train chanting our japa. Then we'd walk from the train station to our temple, open up the doors, and go and pay obeisances to Lord Jagannath and just sit and chant. front of Lord Jagannath.
I was sent on traveling Sankirtan as a
Oh.
new devotee for 5 months. And we new devotee, Western clothes, all these things. And then one day we decided to stop at the foot of the local temple. And as soon as I went in, the smell of the incense and the whole atmosphere just,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. I think all of us oldies had that experience so many times. But it's also right here. We've had that experience here so many times. The pure devotee comes here, and then everything becomes sparkling and very transcendental. And all the devotees are completely enlivened. So, the holy place, living in a holy place, is essential. It's one of the 5 most important activities which will probably be mentioned in this section here. The 5. Sadhu Sangha, Nam Kirtan, Bhagavat Shravan, Mathura Vasa, Sri Murti Shraddhaya Seva. Serving Sri Murti with Shraddha. And Mathura Vasa, living in Mathura. So Prabhupada extended that to the temple. The temple is transcendental. The city is in the mode of passion. The countryside is in the mode of goodness. But the temple is transcendental. Even if it's right in the middle of the city. Even in London, we had this temple right off of the main street. Orchard Boulevard or something. Yeah. And we had this temple with 4 stories and restaurant and temple room and then, preaching rooms and then ashram. And right off of one of the main drags, shopping area, millions of people. But inside of our temple, transcendental. Radha London Ishvara. We're there. Yes, so to accept things only in quantity sufficient to maintain one's life. Actually, Krishna usually doesn't let devotees become too wealthy. It's true. It's true. And for the devotees who he wants to give his full mercy to, what does he say he does? He takes everything away. And what happens then when Krishna does that to that particular devotee who he wants to give his full mercy to?
He becomes rejected by his family and by everyone as a beggar.
Yeah.
As a failure.
And then?
And then later on,
he fully surrenders to Krishna because of that. So it's his mercy. But generally, we were walking with Gurudev one time in the Philippines. It was his visit in the year 1999, just before Y2K. And he was walking for the first time in this neighborhood. And right next to the neighborhood, we had a rented house, very nice. Very, very nice, and a good neighborhood. But right next to there was a fence, and there were some, poorer houses. There was a fence. So he was walking around the neighborhood. And he was remarking how, kind of like India, you'll have very nice, and then right next to it, poor people, And then he said, actually, it is very difficult for persons who are too wealthy to surrender to Krishna. Very difficult for them. Then he said, and also for those who are too much poor, it is also difficult for them. But those who are in between, most of the devotees come from that category. My Guru Maharaj came from that category, he said. I came from that category, like this, he said. So, Krishna arranges, because if someone is too wealthy, then it's difficult for them, because they have the wrong ego. Their self-estimation becomes stronger. Their false ego, I, me, mine, like this. And it's difficult to surrender to Krishna. So anyway, the thing is that Krishna, he will test the devotees. And therefore, to give up one's own enjoyment for the sake of love for Krishna, and to accept things only in a sufficient quantity, but to maintain one's life. That's what Prabhupada used to say. He says, you should eat enough to keep body and soul together. That should be the standard, right? He always said that, to keep body and soul together, right? And you should accept the items that are given and be satisfied, because one of the other principles is that if this is suddenly taken away, which happens in life, lose this, losing that, even basic necessities, the devotee should never be disturbed. You should just tolerate. So many nice instructions. It's time for the evening Gaur Artik, Radha Krishna Jugal Artik, here in New Braj. And we wish that the devotees who are watching on Facebook could be here with us, and they could also attend our Artik. But at any rate, you can do the same Artik where you are, in your homes. That's the unique thing about Krishna consciousness. Wherever you are, you can worship Krishna. Gaur Premanande. Vancha kalpatarubhascha kripa sindhubheda cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo